Hello, I'm Charles Kovess. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show. Whether you're watching on Rumble, on YouTube, from where I have been banned for speaking the truth, or listening to a podcast. In this week's episode, my big idea is to explore perspectives on reality, on what is real, on what it means to be realistic. Each one of us attaches different meanings to any given event. It's quite remarkable. That meaning is what each one of us calls reality, but it actually isn't. When you embrace this idea, you can change your experience of your life. You will have less fear. You will be willing to explore new possibilities for yourself, to allow new possibilities for yourself. And when someone says to you, be realistic, your response can be significantly different to what it is now. I'm sure you'll find this week's episode liberating, insightful, useful. For regular viewers and listeners, we've changed the format of the show so you can get into the content rapidly. The foundational principles of the show and my background will now follow each week's unique content. So, getting into the content, getting into that unique content, what's happened in the last week, which was a unique week on the planet? Well, people are being cancelled for daring to question the mainstream narrative, the government narrative on the Russia-Ukraine situation. Does that sound familiar? If you dare not to take the side of the Ukrainians, then you will be cancelled, you will be excluded, you will suffer. How dare you think for yourself? Shane Warne death continues to have a big impact, so much so that in Victoria's largest selling mainstream newspaper, every day this week there's been an 8-page insert about Shane Warne. During the week, a senator in the Australian Senate, Kimberley Kitching, died at the age of 52, same age as Shane Warne, of a heart attack. So we've had Rod Marsh, Shane Warne, Kimberley Kitching all dying suddenly. And now the papers are full of how to avoid heart attacks. You see the nonsense that's going on here? It couldn't possibly be anything to do with the jabs, could it? No, this is all heart attacks. And so now the mainstream media is saying, let's explore how to check up whether you're going to have a heart attack or not. What a joke. Same with the whole question of the experts in geopolitics who are now saying between Russia and Ukraine, this means this means that. If you rely solely on mainstream media, you are grossly misinformed. In Queensland and New South Wales, we've got the aftermath of these massive floods. There is a lot of media in the alternative media exploring how these extreme weather events came about, and there is excellent science available to talk about the fact that there is some climate engineering happening. Not naturally, but man-made. In any event, there's a lot of suffering going on in northern New South Wales and southern Queensland. And the federal government, state government responses to these challenges, to these tragic, in many instances, many lives have been lost, has been woefully inadequate. Woefully. I have pictures on the ground from friends of mine in those places talking about the fact there's no police, no military people helping the people. And then when the Prime Minister went up to a place called Lismore, he was almost booed out of the place. Government continues to fail us, dear people, not only in Australia, but all around the world. They have another agenda rather than our welfare. The fear-mongering continues in the press. So now encephalitis is the new thing to worry about. Golly gosh, well, if you look at the Pfizer released adverse events listing, encephalitis is one of them. So you get this jab, you get encephalitis, and now suddenly the government is ordering more vaccines for encephalitis. That's it. Keep jabbing yourselves, people. Keep sticking poisons into your body. That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? Be worried, be scared, be afraid. That's the message of the mainstream media. I reject such messages, as you would well know. Don't live your life listening to that mainstream media crap. I read it because I want to know what to report to you on, to balance all the other media that I get, which is far more accurate. There is now, I read this week, activist journalists. So you don't even know when you're getting an alleged journalist putting something in the paper, whether they're an activist journalist or whether they're actually reporting to you. Those activist journalists should be in the opinion sections of the paper, not in the reporting sections of the paper. There are state elections. South Australia is having a state election. The federal election is coming up. I predict that the Liberal Party is going to get a hammering, deservedly so, because what the Liberal Party is supposed to stand for, of freedom, of responsibility, of reward for effort, has totally gone out the window. Liberal Party behaviour is disgraceful in this country. I also found out this week that the federal government, the Liberal federal government, is paying money to big companies like Coles and Woolworths and others to ensure that they enforce the jab mandates on their employees. Just think about that. Governments giving money to big companies to keep ensuring that the jab mandates apply, even though there is no emergency. No emergency, people. People are losing their jobs. People I know are losing their jobs. Nurses are losing their jobs. Health professionals and hospitals are being given money to have wards stay shut. How about that? So, in the midst of all of that, I'm happy. Julie's happy. We're happy together. And you can make that decision to be happy. Stop waiting for circumstances to be fantastic. I have been exercising, I have been working hard. I work 70 to 75 hours a week because I'm passionate. So when you're passionate about your work, you'll never work another day in your life. So while all this is going on, I am loving life because I know this too will pass. Whatever is happening, this too will pass. So, to today's big idea, reality, being realistic. What is really happening on the planet? What is really happening in your life? What do you think is really happening? Is this an objective reality that you are experiencing, or is it all being made up in your head? What is success? I have two friends recently over the last couple of days. Both of them objectively successful. When I look at these two people, one a male, one a female, one a man, one a woman. Both of them are objectively successful. Whenever I bring something good to their attention, their instinctive immediate response is, yes, but how long is that going to last? When I say, look at this wonderful court case in New Zealand. Yeah, but how long is that going to last? Is there going to be an appeal against it? When I congratulate one of them for being successful, oh yeah, but I've got so many other problems. Neither of them feel successful because they're constantly looking at what hasn't been achieved. It's literally like climbing a mountain range, and you get to the top of one mountain, and instead of celebrating the fact that you got to the top of one mountain, the meaning is, gosh, I've got all these other mountains to climb. What a difficult way to live life. Look what that reality is around success. These friends of mine will never feel successful until circumstances are perfect. That's what happens in our minds. If you define success, if your reality is that success means the absence of problems, well, you will never be successful. If, on the other hand, you embrace my meaning of success, that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, then getting to the top of this mountain is a huge success. And I say to myself, I am successful. And I'm going to continue to be successful because I'm progressively realizing worthy ideals, worthy in my mind. This question of never being satisfied. Look at that for a reality. Never satisfied. Nothing is ever satisfactory enough. So let me give you 7 examples to give you ways to think about this question of reality and the impact that your thinking and the meaning that you attach to these experiences can change dramatically. The first one, you lose your job because of jab rules. You don't want the jab because you've woken up. You know how poisonous they are. Do you know there's more than 300 million adverse events on the planet, and that's increasing? So you say, no, I don't want the jabs. So you lose your job. What does that mean? Are you going to say to yourself, my life is over, I've lost everything? Or are you going to say, wow, this is a new opportunity? What's more important to you, health or money? You've heard me talk about that all the time when we're making these decisions. These are value assessments. And so the reality around what it means to lose your job is going to depend upon what you think is important. Number 2, your spouse unexpectedly walks out on you, says, I've had enough. You were totally blissfully unaware. What does that mean? What's the reality around this? Do you say to yourself, I'm going to kill her, I'm going to kill him, I'm going to take him or her for everything that they've got? Are you going to look at yourself and go, gosh, I wonder what I did to make that happen? Different reality. Number 3, you lose an important court case. The judge's reality comes into play here, doesn't it? Or if it's a criminal case, the jury's reality. What meaning do you create out of losing a court case? It might cost you a lot of money. It might cost you status. Just like Zachary Rolfe, the police officer who was charged with murder in the Northern Territory. I'm so glad he got off because I'd been following that case, and you know, it's sad with what happens, but police officers are put under ridiculous strain and then expected in the weeks, months, years down the track, you should have behaved in a different way. There's a 30-year-old police officer who was stabbed by someone he's trying to arrest. So when you lose a court case, what does that mean? What meaning do you put to it? What's the reality around the court case? Number 4, you often see this in the press. You have a child who dies in an accident, in a murder, or like one of my friends who some years ago ran over his child in his car in the driveway, and the child died. That led to the divorce of the couple because the wife could never forgive him. Many people say when they've lost a child, my life is over. That's it. I will never be happy again because I've lost a child. That's one meaning you could give to it. There's all sorts of alternative meanings available from which to choose. 5th example, you lose friends in these challenging times because of government overreach on the response to a non-existent emergency, to the lockdowns, to mandates, to all that crap. You lose friends because they have made a decision to believe another narrative. So what does that mean to you when you lose friends? It can mean that you've been rejected. It can mean that you feel less worthy. Or it can mean that you glory in the fact that you are awake and that some people choose to remain asleep. Now the next example, number 6, you lose all your money. What does that mean? What's the reality around losing all of your money? Well, I put this to you. For most people that would be horrific, terrible, shocking, disaster. If you lost all your money, all your assets, didn't lose your health, didn't lose your friends, didn't lose your family, or lost some of your friends for the previous example that I gave you, would you survive? I say yes. My parents came from Hungary in 1949 with just a suitcase. Well, one suitcase each. Couldn't speak English, came from Hungary. Arrive in Australia. They survived. They had 6 children who had 14 grandchildren, who have had 8 great-grandchildren. How about that, huh? So what's the reality around losing everything that you have? Number 7, very relevant to the Queensland, Northern New South Wales floods. You lose your house, everything. You weren't insured. Same analysis. What does all that mean? Are you going to say, my life is destroyed, it's over, and give up? Or are you going to say, that's an interesting challenge for me? Because all of this comes back to the other big reality of what's a good life. And all of those decisions then lead to the question of, well, what does it mean to be realistic? When someone says to you, be realistic, Charles, what does that mean? What it actually means is live your life according to my reality, the reality that I create relating to my unique meaning that I attach to events. That's what being realistic means. It's pretty limiting, isn't it? Because there are almost 8 billion people on the planet. I say we are each creating meaning to given events, remarkably different meanings to the same event. The fact is that some events happen, like Shane Warne dying, like Senator Kimberley Kitching dying, like the cricketer Rod Marsh dying, like children suffering pericarditis and myocarditis, like all these world-class athletes dying that are listed, available for you to see. These are all facts that are happening, and then you attach meaning to them. That's how these amazing things happen. So you have a fact, but then you attach the meaning, and then that becomes the reality that you're creating. And I say this is a choice. When you become conscious of the fact that you are attaching that meaning, you can change that meaning. You can choose that meaning. You can reframe that meaning so that it does. So the facts that happen do not have to have the same meaning to you today as they did yesterday. I think that's amazingly liberating. I think it's wonderful to be able to choose your meaning. Choice, freedom. You know that's what I'm on about. You have freedom of choice. You have the freedom to attach the meaning. What meaning do you want to attach? Do you want to be miserable, or do you want to be inspired? Do you want to live a shitty life, or do you want to live an inspired life, a passionate life? It's a choice. It's a choice. Choose wisely. And that's what this program is about, to help you raise your awareness around the choices that you are making. So let me share some resources with you. The song, a gospel song. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. Now think about what that means. Nobody knows the trouble you've seen, because you're creating that trouble in your mind. When people are asked, would you like to live someone else's life? Would you like to be in their shoes? Most people say no. Seemingly they say, I'd like to be in that person's shoes, but they've also got problems. The song goes on. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Oh yes, Lord, sometimes I'm almost to the ground. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. That's because each one of us is creating this amazing reality in our minds through the meaning. And so the troubles that I'm experiencing, nobody else knows that. Nobody else knows your troubles. And then when you sing that song, it gives you a powerful spiritual impetus to go, yeah, okay, I'm creating this. It's a reminder of how you're creating it. And my spiritual tip today is to raise your consciousness, is to take the spiritual steps that I've talked about previously, because when you start to see the spiritual elements of our lives, you start to live life at a whole different level. Look at the spiritual relevance of everything that's happening to you, because you think you can see reality, but you cannot. You and I are only seeing an actual slither of reality. My book this week is by Deepak Chopra that will help you look at success in a spiritual sense. It's the 7 spiritual laws of success. Excellent book, excellent. Small book, worth reading. My health tip, it ties into this spiritual element. And yesterday on my radio program on TNTRadio.Live, I interviewed Diane McCann Matthews, who talked about a Healy machine, Healy, Healy machine. And it deals with vibrational healing of your body, a vibrational diagnosis of what's happening in your body. And when you remember that 99.997% of your atoms are empty space, the truth is that your body is not a physical thing. It is a physical, mental, spiritual thing. A Healy machine. Contemplate investing in the ability of such machines to diagnose you. There are other vibrational machines that are also available. I haven't got time to go into them, but be aware of them. My quote is by James Allen from his book As a Man Thinketh, and it goes like this: the vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this you will build your life by, and this you will become. So the reality is that the vision that you create in your mind is what you will become. So choose. Do you want to be a cathedral in physical terms, or a toilet block, or anything in between? That's what you will become if you focus on that. And it's then the spiritual and mental aspects that lead to the physical creation in your life. And my joke for you, in fact, because we're talking about realities, and while I'm drinking my coffee, to which I'm addicted, there are different realities. My first one is a short joke about dentists. A lady walked into a dentist surgery and exclaimed, "I don't know which is worse, having a root canal or having a baby." The dentist replied, "Well, make up your mind so I know how to tilt the chair." Another joke about different realities. You know, a beggar walks up to a well-dressed woman shopping in Toorak in Melbourne, or Rodeo Drive in California, and says, "I haven't eaten anything in 4 days." She looked at him and said, "God, I wish I had your willpower." And the third one. A couple were on vacation in a fishing resort in northern Minnesota. The husband liked to fish at the crack of dawn. The wife loves reading. One morning, the husband returns after several hours of fishing and decides to take a nap. Although not familiar with the lake, his wife decides to take the boat out. She motors out a short distance, anchors, and continues to read her book in the middle of the lake. Along comes a game warden in his boat. He pulls up alongside the woman and says, "Good morning, ma'am. What are you doing?" "Reading a book," she replies. "Isn't that obvious?" she thinks. "You're in a restricted fishing area," he informs her. "I'm sorry, officer, but I'm not fishing, I'm reading." "Ah, but you have all the equipment. I'll have to take you in and write you up." "If you do that, I'll have to charge you with sexual assault," replies the woman. "But I haven't even touched you," says the game warden. "That's true, but you have all the equipment." I love it. That's what humour is all about. A whole new reality about a given circumstance. Isn't that interesting? That's why jokes are funny, because you get a different reality to a set of circumstances. So think about how today's big idea can make a difference to your life, because I promise you it can. I believe your life is designed to be all that you are capable of making it, and the reality that you create in your mind will certainly dictate those limits. My aim for this show is to provoke you, to inspire you, to teach you about how amazingly powerful each one of us is and what each one of us is capable of achieving. I invite you to subscribe to the podcast, to the Rumble channel. I'll go back to YouTube when eventually their stupid censorship disappears. Sign up for Passion Points to Ponder on covest.com or charlescovest.com. Discover more about the self-awareness and passion quest at charlescovest.com. You can download the manifesto on that site as well. And you can visit covest.com for corporate programs and public programs. You can access my books Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance at both of those websites. I've had and continue to have great feedback from people who have read those books. If you are new to the show, stick around for the rest of the show where I explore our foundational principles for this show and also my background. Again, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and until our next show, may your week be full of love, laughter, fun, challenge, passion, and amazing experiences that help you to appreciate the amazing gift that we have called life. Thanks for being with us. See you next week. Now, for new viewers and listeners, and thank you for being a new viewer or listener, who want to know more of my background and what else I do in the foundational principles of the show, please listen on. Since 1993, when I left a legal career that I loved to do this work, I have been educating, inspiring, motivating and provoking audiences to live a life of passion, to discover their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, my speeches at major conferences, team building programs over 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. And I've been coaching people in small groups and one-on-one, from C-suite executives and all types of people, big companies, small companies. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on people is the threat of imprisonment for breaking the law. Imprisonment is the loss of freedom. A financial penalty doesn't bother most people. Imprisonment does. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be free and able to move through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom through the expansion globally of industrial hemp as an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently. In this way, the power of government to take away your freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. And number 5, as chairman of Australia's Institute of Comedy and a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, I fight for the freedom of thought and speech for humour, comedy and laughter. If governments want to take away freedom, they start with taking away freedom of speech, which is what the Australian government, UK government, US government, Canadian government has been doing over the past 2 years. The foundational principles for this weekly show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness plus your passion will guarantee that you are successful. The best definition of success that I have found is this: success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideal. Your worthy ideal, not someone else's, yours. And it's the progressive realization, not the attainment of it, because when you attain it, it's like you've gone to the top of the mountain. You have to come down. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. Red is the colour of passion, and I wear red so that when you're watching the show, it reminds you, whenever you see red, to ask the question, am I pursuing my passion? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. And if we have too many ideas thrown at us, then we don't choose anything. Each week I also share with you simple and practical resources that I have found in my work with groups and with individuals one-on-one that can help you implement the one big idea. The lyrics of a song, a book, a health tip, a spiritual tip, a quote, and obviously some humour. This show is not politically correct. It's not meant to be politically correct. I have no desire to be politically correct. I have no fear of cancel culture. I oppose wokeness. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction for coffee. I love it. And my addiction for sport and for being fit. And addictions to certain other unmentionable activities that I can't talk about in certain company, you might say. This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spirit, a soul, a heart. And so if that offends you, then this show is not for you. The human spirit is an amazing resource. I promise you I don't include anything in the show that I don't believe will be useful and that I'm not willing to do myself. And finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please send me an email at charles@coves.com. Come along for the ride. Thanks for being here. Join us each week, and I'm confident it will make a big positive difference in your life. Bye.